On the morning of December 1st, 1948, a man was found dead on Somerton Beach, Adelaide, Australia. He was well dressed. He was in good physical condition. There were no signs of struggle, no identification of any kind. Every label had been cut from his clothing. A pathologist concluded that he had likely been poisoned, but no poison was found. Months later, a scrap of paper was discovered in a hidden pocket in his trousers. 2 words, typeset in an elaborate printed script, Tamam Shud, Persian. It means "it is finished." The words had been torn from the final page of a rare edition of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam, a book of poetry about fate and the end of things. A copy of that book was located. In the back, detectives found a phone number. The number was unlisted. It belonged to a nurse named Jessica Thompson. She lived near the beach. She was reluctant to talk. She admitted she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man she had known during the war. Shortly after being interviewed, she gave birth to a son. Her son had a rare anatomical feature of the ear. So did the dead man. Jessica Thompson never fully explained her connection to the case. She died in 2007. She took whatever she knew with her. The man on Somerton Beach was found at approximately 6:30 in the morning. He was slumped against the seawall in a position that witnesses who had seen him the previous evening had taken for sleep or drunkenness. Several people had noticed him during the night of November 30th and paid little attention. One witness later told investigators that they had seen him raise his arm and let it fall. They thought he was resting. He was not resting. He was approximately 45 years old. He was 5'11". He was well built, physically fit, with large, strong hands. Hands that looked, investigators noted, as if they belonged to someone who worked with them. His clothing was expensive and well maintained. A brown double-breasted suit, a white shirt, a red and blue tie, brown shoes. An unlit cigarette rested on his collar as if he had placed it there and not had time or opportunity to light it. There was no wallet, no identification documents, no watch or ring, nothing with a name on it. His fingerprints were sent to law enforcement agencies around the world, including the FBI, which returned a signed letter from J. Edgar Hoover confirming no match had been found. His dental records matched no one in any database. His face was reconstructed and circulated. No one came forward to claim him. The investigation gave him a name of a sort, the Somerton Man, and then the pathologist issued a finding that deepened the case considerably. The man had almost certainly been poisoned. The internal evidence, congestion in the stomach, enlargement of certain organs, hemorrhagic spots in the gut, was consistent with a toxic substance. But no poison could be identified. The technology of 1948 was not sufficient to detect certain compounds. The pathologist said, carefully, that in his opinion the cause of death was consistent with poisoning by a substance he was unable to identify. The death certificate listed the cause of death as unknown. The discovery of the paper changed the case. A pathologist re-examining the body months after the initial investigation noticed something in the man's trousers that had been missed, a small fob pocket, the kind usually used for a pocket watch, sewn into the waistband. Inside, tightly rolled, was a scrap of paper. The paper was approximately 1 inch by half an inch. On it, in typeset script, were 2 words, Tamam Shud. A journalist recognized the phrase as Persian and contacted police. They obtained a copy of the Rubaiyat of Omar Khayyam and confirmed that Tamam Shud were the final words of the book. The phrase translates variously as "it is finished," "it is over," or "it is ended." Words that end a meditation on fate, mortality, and the acceptance of what cannot be changed. The specific edition from which the page had been torn was unusual, a rare New Zealand printing from 1941, not widely distributed. Police appealed to the public for a matching copy. A man contacted police anonymously. He said he had found a copy of the Rubaiyat in the back seat of his unlocked car, parked near Somerton Beach on November 30th, the night before the body was discovered. He didn't know how it had gotten there. He had kept it, forgotten it, and only now connected it to the news coverage of the dead man. The torn page matched the scrap perfectly, and on the inside back cover, under ultraviolet light, investigators found something else: indentations, letters pressed into the cover from writing on a page that had since been removed. 5 lines of capital letters, some crossed out, arranged in a pattern that looked like a cipher. The cipher has never been decoded. The phone number was in the book, an unlisted number, handwritten in pencil, found alongside the cipher indentations. Police traced it to a young nurse who lived in Glenelg, a suburb close to Somerton Beach. Her name, as she was publicly identified for decades, was Jestin, a pseudonym used to protect her privacy. She was later identified as Jessica Ellen Thompson, née Harkness. When investigators showed her a photograph of the dead man, the detective present later described her reaction as one of near collapse. She had to be physically supported. She denied recognizing him. She said the photograph did not match anyone she knew. She later admitted that she had given a copy of the Rubaiyat to a man she had known during the war, a man named Alfred Boxall. Police found Boxall in Sydney, alive and well, with his copy of the Rubaiyat intact. He was not the Somerton man. Jessica was interviewed multiple times over the following years. She never offered a full explanation for why her phone number was in the book. She never explained why she had nearly collapsed at the photograph. She deflected. She minimized. She maintained that she had told investigators everything she knew. She had not. A detail that emerged later saw in research conducted decades after her first interview concerned her son. Robin Thompson, born in the months following the first police interviews, shared with the Somerton man a very rare anatomical feature, a specific configuration of the external ear found in a very small percentage of the population. Robin Thompson also grew up to be unusually physically fit. He died in 2009 without ever commenting publicly on the case. Jessica Thompson died in 2007. She never explained the photograph. She never explained the number. She never explained her son. On January 14, 1949, 6 weeks after the body was found, investigators located a brown suitcase at Adelaide railway station. It had been checked in on November 30, 1948, the night before the Somerton man's death. Inside the suitcase, clothing, toiletries, a dressing gown, a pair of trousers. Several items showed signs of repair, and the thread used in the repairs matched thread found on the body. The suitcase almost certainly belonged to the Somerton man. Every label had been cut from every item inside. This detail, the systematic removal of every label, in the suitcase and on the body, is one of the most discussed aspects of the case. It is not how an ordinary person prepares for a trip. It is how a person prepares to be unidentifiable. There were several unusual items in the suitcase: a knife modified to a point, an electrician's screwdriver, a stenciling brush, the kind used to apply lettering to crates or equipment. A stenciling brush has one primary use. It marks things with letters. It identifies things that should not be confused with other things. A man who carries a stenciling brush and removes all labels from his clothing is a man navigating two opposing requirements. He must identify some things precisely, and he must leave no identification of himself. This is a specific kind of professional problem. December 1948 was not an ordinary moment in history. The Cold War was consolidating. The Soviets had detonated their first nuclear test the previous year, earlier than Western intelligence had expected. Australia was, at that moment, one of the most significant sites of nuclear research in the Western Alliance. British nuclear tests were conducted on Australian soil throughout the 1950s. The intelligence apparatus of multiple nations had active operations in Australia during this period. The details of the Somerton man case, the untraceable poison, the cipher in a poetry book, the systematic removal of identifying information. the connection to a woman who refused to explain herself, the stenciling brush, the physical fitness, are consistent with the profile of an intelligence operative. Spies in the Cold War era used poetry books as one-time pad cipher keys. The Rubaiyat, with its numbered quatrains, provided a simple index system. A message encoded against the Rubaiyat could only be decoded by someone holding the same edition, the same rare New Zealand printing from 1941. We don't know who held the matching copy. We don't know who the cipher in the back was addressed to. We don't know what it said. And we don't know whether the Australian Security Intelligence Organisation, founded in 1949, the year after the Somerton man's death, had knowledge of this case that has never been made public. ASIO's files on the Somerton man, if they exist, have not been released. In July 2022, Professor Derek Abbott of the University of Adelaide, working with American genealogist Colleen Fitzpatrick, announced that they had identified the Somerton man. The name Carl Charles Webb, an electrical engineer and instrument maker, born in Melbourne in 1905. A man who had worked in industries that would have given him knowledge of precision instruments, electrical systems, and the kind of specialized tools found in a brown suitcase at Adelaide railway station. The identification came through DNA, hair strands trapped in a plaster cast made of the Somerton man's face in 1949 had preserved genetic material. Abbott and Fitzpatrick built a family tree of approximately 4,000 people and found a match, a distant relative whose DNA connected to the hair samples. South Australia Police, as of this recording, have not officially confirmed the identification. Even if Carl Webb is confirmed as the Somerton man, the identification answers one question. It does not answer why he was in Adelaide. It does not answer why every label was removed. It does not answer what killed him. It does not answer what the cipher says. It does not answer Jessica Thompson's phone number. It does not answer the child with the same rare ear. And it does not answer the flowers. For decades, after the Somerton man was buried in West Terrace Cemetery, Adelaide, someone left flowers on his grave. Not once, not occasionally, repeatedly, over years. No one was ever identified as the person leaving the flowers. The grave itself carried no name, only the words, "The unknown man," under which was listed the date of death and the date of burial. Someone knew to find the grave. Someone returned to it. Someone, for reasons they never explained to anyone, felt the need to mark the grave of a man whose name, officially, no one knew. We don't know who it was. We know it wasn't random. Here is what we know. A man died on Somerton Beach in December 1948. He was poisoned by a substance that left no detectable trace. He had removed every identifying label from his clothing and his luggage. He carried a scrap of Persian poetry that means "it is finished." His phone number led to a nurse who nearly fainted at his photograph and refused to explain herself for the rest of her life. Her son shared his rarest physical trait. A cipher in the back of a poetry book has resisted every attempt at decryption for 76 years. Someone left flowers on his grave for decades. In 2022, a researcher identified him as Carl Webb. The police have not confirmed it, and the cipher still hasn't been solved. Here is what we don't know: why he was there, what killed him, who removed the labels, what the cipher says, what Jessica Thompson knew, who left the flowers, and whether the answer to all of these questions is the same answer or 11 different ones. We're laying out what we found. You decide what it means. If you know something we don't, you know where to find us. Subscribe, share this, and leave a comment, because somewhere there may still be someone who knows what Tamam Shud meant to the man who carried it to the beach, and why, when he got there, he decided it was finished.